Homelessness is unique. It can look like tents on the sidewalk. It can look like individuals couch surfing. Homelessness is particularly visible in the Portland area, and it was a top issue in the recent election. There's a lot of pressure on our local officials and government to figure out how to solve this really incredibly complex challenge. There's no one way to solve homelessness. It starts long before an individual ends up in a tent on the street.
Somebody got scratched out. This is hilarious. The one in the very back is my oldest biological daughter, Tatiana.
My name is Lilly Killbear. I'm half Inupiat Eskimo and half German. I was born in Alaska. I didn't meet my native family until I was 19. My father fled without telling the family where he was taking me. Growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, you don't see a whole lot of Eskimos running around. How do I identify? How do I connect with that part of who I am? My mother and my grandmother, Mayaka, hired a private detective, and he found us in San Francisco. They didn't know all these years where I was. Then when I was 16, I heard my mom's voice for the first time. There was a lot of trauma in my childhood, and when I go to nature, I feel better. Like it all just kind of melts away. I found myself always picking up sticks and stones. Just, oh, I like this stick. Oh, I like this feather. Oh, I like this branch. I'd come home with pockets full of things, right? But then what do you do with them? And I thought, what if I put that in the art and someone gets to take that home with them and maybe share that experience that I had? Oh, this is gonna work good. My kids all homeschooled, and we lived in Mount Shasta, and I raised my children. And after the divorce, I needed my children to know their culture. So we went back to Alaska. Village life is much like reservation life. It's harsh. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol, a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect, and that's apparent in its children. And so at that point, I was like, well, I think we need to leave. We were living on credit cards and staying in hotels, which I could not sustain. And their dad was sending us money, but not a whole lot, and not always reliably. So our first time in a homeless shelter, my kids were 7, 9, and 12, and it was hard. Try number 2, I went with a guy who I thought was my soulmate. Mr. Perfect beat me up in a cabin we were kind of squatting in. My kids climbed out the window and ran. They flagged down a car and got taken to the police, and the police came back and got us. And that sounds like an awful thing, but that got me housing. I didn't leave that guy because I wanted to leave that guy. I left that guy because I had children, and they saw him beat me. But if it had just been me, I would have let him kill me. I would have stayed. Because that's what I do, right? That's where I came from. I was working as a banquet chef at the University of Alaska in Juneau and raising 5 teenagers all by myself. There was one day on the bus, I couldn't get off after my shift at work. I couldn't stand up to get off the bus, and I didn't know what to do. The next job was at drug and alcohol treatment. I loved that job, and my hope was it would be physically less demanding. What I didn't account for was the emotional trauma. And in the meantime, my kids are starting to do fun things like become heroin addicts. At the hospital I was working at, we would have 6 ODs in a weekend. And if there was a 19-year-old female, I would think, oh God, it's Tori. I started becoming suicidal. I started thinking, I can't live in a world where my baby that I breastfed is sticking needles in her arm. I can't live every day thinking, today's the day I'm gonna get the call. You know, it was too much. I had a Subaru station wagon. That is a wonderful accommodation. It fits a sleeping bag perfectly, you know? That's not homeless, right? That's shelter, that's doable.
When Lilly came in, her feeling like she wasn't homeless enough, or even her words worthy enough to receive this help. That touched me. She had applied for an apartment, and she just didn't know how she could afford it. The apartment was more than her income. So Lilly came down here to the office and met with me, and we did some paperwork, and she became eligible for the program.
Hi, Lilly. Oh my goodness. This is beautiful. It's very homey, it's very welcoming.
The branches were all attached, and when I moved from Alaska, I cut them and I marked them with colors, like pink, pink, purple, purple, and I was gonna reattach all the branches.
Well, yeah, because you had to mark them so you knew how to reattach
Where to put
them.
it back. Isn't that beautiful?
This is amazing. Oh.
It feels really good in here.
It does, I like
and
that.
that's a thing. I believe in that, you know, I think that energy is felt by people, and it's part of our requirement to create a environment that makes people feel good.
Welcomed,
Yeah.
Everybody deserves a home. That's a place to sleep, a place to take care of themselves, to be healthy, exist in a world that's already hard enough to be in.
When I got into this place, I gotta tell you, day 2 and 3, I was sitting in here going, this is too good. And I think back to when I met my Aka, my grandmother. She was living in native housing with my brother, her grandson, down the hall. I thought, wow, it's like family tradition, right? I lived down the hall from my grandson. Hi, we're here. That's very exciting. That's very exciting. Yeah. My daughter, Tori, got into this building.
Oh, she's so excited. She's just so excited.
I thought living this close would be a bad idea because they need a lot of help, and I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to put a limit on what I can and can't do. I overdo. But it's been a good exercise, and having my own space, I'm learning.
She's like my best friend, so having her right down the hall is like so much better. And Rigel loves it because Izaka is his favoriteest person in the whole wide world. Just loves Izaka so much. And it's such a blessing just having a place to live and feel safe. Arms up. Arms up. I never have to worry about my stuff getting stolen or, how I'm gonna eat or anything. I have everything that I could ever want.
I have a future. I don't want to check out. I'm off the list. I'm no longer on a contract that says, I promise I won't hurt myself, or I will call someone before I do. If this is the last place I land, okay, this is nirvana.